Yeah, this is it. Over there in Florida, my friend Rish. Good morning.
Good morning. And over there, Roland.
Yeah, for a moment I thought you don't know who I am.
No, I was trying to think of good morning doesn't really work where you're at. What is it like
No,
noon?
yep, just past
Yeah.
1 o'clock,
And
and
no one says
yeah,
good noon.
exactly, exactly.
Couldn't make it work. Sorry. Failing from the start.
Well, there's always room for improvement if things go like that. But then again, it could end up like the Russian invasion in Ukraine, where things only get worse and worse. Isn't it the truth?
It could. So, where would we like to start? I got some stuff on planes.
Yeah, shoot.
So, Zelensky went to the G7, and I don't get, they keep banging on this F-16 door. And the US finally said, we're not going to sell you any, like we already said, but now we won't stop our allies from supplying you. Like I said, maybe I'm missing something, but I don't understand why they want these F-16s so badly, because you don't need to be using them. They'd be too valuable to use for air superiority. They're fourth gen. They can be shot down. So, and then bringing in, it's a completely different way of thinking about a jet versus the mix. So they have to retrain their pilots. They have to do so much. They have to establish supply lines, everything, maintenance schedules.
Exactly. Yeah.
When if they had MiG 29s, and by the way, MiG 29s perform better than an F 16 at slow speeds. And what I see that the Ukrainians really need is close air support, because they're fighting an antiquated form of battle. They're not fighting this modern three-phase, you know, what does America call it? Global domain or global warfare space dominion program. They're not doing it. So instead of just being a negative Nancy and poking holes, and why do they want these F-16s to so bad, which I would love to hear your opinion on. I first have a better suggestion. Have you ever heard of the Cessna T-37?
Um, I can't put a picture to the plane there now. But speaking of what kind of plane they would need, or what you and I think they would need, I would simply go with two other planes and
Well,
just
let
right
me
from the
think
start.
mine, and then I'll you go on both
Yep,
of yours. So
yep,
the
sure.
Cessna T-37 was the training fighter jet. It's a twin in side by side cockpit, very small aircraft. And for 52 years, it was the Air Force's training jet. Now, it's also, it helped lead to the A-10 Thunderbolt. And this is how. The T-37 turned into the A-37 Dragonfly. They upgraded the engines. They gave it twin J-35 jet engines. It's an aircraft that only weighs 5,000 pounds. It can go 500 miles an hour. And for 52 years, it didn't retire till 2009 from the Air Force officially. It can carry, and it's 5,000 pounds. It can carry 3,000 pounds of bomb payload. On each wing, they can put external fuel tanks at the tips, where like on an F-18, the missiles would be. Each of those can hold 95 gallons apiece. It also, in addition to 3,000 pounds worth of bombs, it also has the Gauss 2 minigun. It only can carry 250 rounds. It has a 2-to-1 maintenance ratio, so 1 hour up, 2 hours down. So these things are very easy to maintain, and you can get all that for 400,000 per unit. Now, a lot of people have heard of it, a lot of people haven't, but it was the most effective close air support jet in the Vietnam War. with a average accuracy of 45 feet. Now that's pretty damn impressive. 45 feet off when you're dropping 1,000 pounds at a time of napalm, America's freedom gel. It's very effective. So if the war there is going to be an antiquated form, what I see that the Ukrainians need the most is close air support. They need to bleed the Russians. They need to destroy convoys of supplies, and they need to bleed them on the front lines. But it's easier to bleed them on the back end and just keep hitting those supply lines, hit the fuel depots, hit the convoys, hit the rail. This will do all of that. Now, when America got rid of ours, which was only in 2009 when we got rid of the last ones, we sold them all to like Central American countries, South Vietnam, and got some before the war was over. Of course, I don't think Vietnam's gonna sell anything because China's right there being all crazy. So if they have anything that can weed out infantry formations, they're not selling. So at 400,000 a pop with easy maintenance, because it's essentially a trainer turned into an attack aircraft, we could find these and they'd be a lot cheaper than these 12, 20, $30 billion aid packages. And I just see that as something, if they really wanted to go after the supply lines, they could use this, and they could fly low, they could fly slow, they could get in there, they could cause crazy damage, get out. And the price point on it is where they can afford. So I'm not getting the F-16, but I've identified what an area. I don't think the F-16 makes sense. If you want a more modern jet, the MiG-29. But instead of just poking holes in it, I went out and I did some research and I found something. So if you're gonna have a problem, have a solution. That's where I'm at. Where are you at on this jets in Ukraine thing?
Well, where to start? First of all, as you said, in this kind of war, what's going on right now, Ukraine doesn't need fighter jets, especially not an F-16. So, like you said, what would be helpful to a certain degree is close air support, which the F-16 can do, which other platforms can provide potentially at a lower price tag. And if you want a relatively modern plane, a relatively cheap plane, I would go for the Super Tucano. It's a propeller-driven plane, okay? But yeah, even the Air Force is considering it as a light attack aircraft, because as you said, we put the Broncos out of commission. We are looking to put the A-10s out of commission. So
I don't agree with that.
I don't agree with that either, because we don't have any platform that can do what the A-10 can do. If you look at a different kind of warfare, then yes, okay, A-10 replacement by, for example, F-35s and using them from standoff distance, okay, that makes somewhat sense. But again, the Ukraine war has shown that you don't need all that expensive hardware to blow up a tank or blow up.
And we would never sell A-10s to Ukraine. We're keeping
number
that
one
way from Russia.
We are not going to sell or allow the sale of modern F-16s. No. Like you mentioned earlier around in the conversation we had, those are not modern F-16s. It's probably Block 30 or Block 50s at the very most.
Right.
And we currently have the Block 70, Block 72 or something. Mm-hmm. So, and don't get me wrong, the F-16 is a great plane.
Yeah, no, I'm not, and I'm just for the record, I'm not banging on the F-16 either. I love the bubble cockpit. I love that it's all weather. I love its track record. I love that it's lightweight. I love that it can use a short runway.
With MiG-29s, I would, if at all, go with Sukhoi 27s with the flanker or a flanker derivative. But again, here's the question: why would they want these jets right now? Because you need to train a year, two on these planes for them to be used effectively. The other thing is we don't want to give the Ukrainians idea. I mean, this morning I read an article about how some Ukrainians just went across the border and occupied a Russian town in Russia.
I
Yeah.
saw that.
So I'm looking at, do we really want to give these people the idea? Well, if you are going to go towards Moscow, we got your back. That's not really what we want, because that could escalate very, very quickly. From a military perspective, as you said, bleeding the Russians where they are right now is the possibly the safest thing for the Ukrainians and the world to do this. Now,
Staging areas, fuel depots, supply lines, convoys.
I'm going back to what Peter Zahan said a couple of days ago about how the Russians, all the mobilization they have done, those people are now dead or so far down the casualty or the wounded list, they won't come back anytime soon. And I was under the impression the Russians went in with 180,000 fighting force in last year. So, and Peter Zahan quotes the number of 140,000. Okay, not that much difference, but still quite a significant difference. You're going into hostile country with 140,000 and expect to win something. I mean, what is the game plan here? Because unless you are literally just rolling from the Russian border to Kiev unopposed, that's nowhere near enough.
Well, a lot of their special forces attacks on key airfields ended up getting repelled. So they had expected to get better troops further in country quicker. And then you talk about, the mobilization, and a big part of Wagner Group was, we'll recruit out of the prisons, put them up front as cannon fodder. Well, the prisons, everyone who wanted to sign up for that deal is either on the team or they're dead.
Yep. I mean, the track record for such it's penal battalions essentially is
Stalin
very,
did it
very
too,
bad.
and then
So
shit
did
on
Hitler.
them. And then when there was a name for the troops, because they took them out, and then they called them something with an S. It basically means bitch, because he promised them a way out. And then they went back, and then the Russian mob guys, the hardcore thieves guild type guys with all the tattoos, they treated them people bad because they worked with the government. Then the government screwed them over and sent them back to the wolves. And I'm not talking about the wolves of Siberia. I'm talking about the wolves they put away in Siberia.
Yeah. But another reason why I really don't get this is you will recall the Russians dropped the bomb on their own city.
Yeah.
So, and that was probably done by an Su-34. It's basically a flanker gone bigger and a bomber. And they used a glide bomb that didn't work. And they dropped that bomb to glide into Ukraine, significantly outside Ukrainian airspace, which tells me one thing and one thing only, that airspace over Ukraine, over the battlefield, is so contested that it doesn't make sense to go up in the air with anything that costs money.
So why train something for a year, complete and entirely new supply lines and training facilities and maintenance, just for it to get shot down by
People don't
a
know
$50,000 missile fire or
how
shoulder
much of a logistic track is behind any piece of military hardware. So, for example, I read in the 1980s, our Tornadoes had 70 hours of maintenance for every hour of flight, or something like that. I could be totally wrong with this, but that
it wasn't 2 to 1.
No, it does not include any kind of spare parts, any kind of fuel, oil, hydraulics, fluids, literally everything you have to do in order to make that machine go up. Whether it will come down eventually by nature or by shooting down.
Yeah.
But really, this is there is way cheaper ways for Ukraine to achieve this.
So why do you think they want it so bad? They've been banging on it for over a year.
Well, that's a good question. First of all, let's look at it. Why would we now want to sell it to them? I think the intentions are quite clear. Well, the Ukrainians are not going to shut up about it. Okay, number one. Number two, well, if allied nations are handing out old F-16s, they will be in the market for new F-16s or newer platforms that we can sell them. So we're just pushing old equipment by proxy on the battlefield in Ukraine. And a thing I have been talking about while I was away on a little retreat. What we are doing right now here, we are live wargaming World War III, which we would have had 30, 40 years ago in Germany. We are doing it in Ukraine, and we are doing it without putting our own boots on the ground.
And we're
That's
not
what's
having
going
to
on.
dispose of all of our old hardware because it's getting used.
It is getting, well, I don't want to say getting put to good use, because at the end of the day we are talking about people killing each other. But
I
what
just said
seems to be
used.
going right now is, and that again, that makes Peter Zahan's point absolutely perfectly, and also the point why Ukraine doesn't need fighter jets. You have right now a lot of people on the Russian lines digging trenches and building anti-tank fortifications. First of all, if you are inducted into the army, let's say you have been inducted in that period where Russia mobilized, or if you're being mobilized now or in the very near future, what kind of experience do you have to build that kind of stuff? I mean, Americans during the Vietnam War said FNG, fucking new guy. Yeah. So you literally come out. Maybe you are not even coming out of boot camp. You are sent to Ukraine to learn on the job, so to speak. Well, dig a trench, build an anti-tank fortification, and you are learning by observing, which is possibly even an abbreviated or not by the book form, shall we say. So now imagine those lines of defense against Western equipment, or knowing there is Western equipment 3-4 miles down the road, and you start getting pounded by artillery. What are you doing? The first drone you see, you wave the white flag. So this could
There's
this
plenty of
could go
videos of
down.
that going around.
Yeah, I was, on one hand, I was surprised that we start seeing this video. On the other hand, I'm not surprised because at the end of the day, it's uh, like I said, Peter Zahan filled in that gap. If there is really such a high casualty rate, we are talking about 200, 300,000 people. Yeah, not dead, but so incapacitated for such a long time, they are of no effective use in this war, no matter how long this will take. So, and yes, you can be unfit for duty and return to duty after a year, two, or whatever. Yeah, that is not unheard of. You
Well,
have no idea what kind of injuries you can have and can recover from.
but thinking about how mentioning Peter Zane, he did talk about in one of his later ones about how this could turn. The Russians see conflicts, 20, 50, 100 years, because they still have the objectives. So they're willing to do the ebb and flow and achieve an objective over a large amount of time. So if Ukraine sees that they've done that to other ethnic regions, where basically they just waited them out with low intensity conflicts, followed by nothing, followed by high intensity, maybe they're thinking the F-16s aren't actually for this conflict. They're for the next time Russia comes.
Well, in form of deterrence, it won't deter the Russians in that kind of scenario.
I don't think it would either, but I'm trying to wrap my head around why they want these damn jets so bad.
Well, my look, if I was going on about this, this is literally for setting my country's military, my future military, up for a post-war NATO membership. This is again. You said it right. Why are they not going for MiG-29s? Or I mean, Romania offered their old MiG-21s, and they want to switch to F-16s. So the question here really is what is the game plan of both sides? So it could make absolute sense that they want F-16s, but the other question is once again, the Russians keep, or the Russian Air Force keeps out of this contested airspace. There is a reason for that. So, and it's also, well, one of the reasons may be that the Russian air defense is also quite trigger happy and is known to be quite trigger happy. So they don't care what plane they put out of the sky. So there is
And we
that.
have sent a lot of mobile, like besides Patriot, we also sent I forget the term, but it's the Humvee that can carry like 6 Stingers at
The
a
Avenger,
time. Right. And then before that, Germany had sent a self-propelled
Gepard.
AA gun.
Yep.
I mean, and that thing looks pretty ferocious for how old it is. I mean, that thing looked like it would tear something up. And you can also use it on infantry. I don't know if that's a war crime, but those guns swiveled all the way
Um,
down.
well, the Gepard was not specific. Well, let's put it that way. The Gepard was not specifically designed for anything except rolling with the Leopard 1 and Leopard 2 tanks and providing regional air defense over the battlefield. Um, in a modern battlefield, well, yes, you can detect and destroy that radar from far away, but first of all, you need to be able to get into the range, which I pretty much doubt the Russians would want to risk, because you never know, as we said before, if there is some guy with a $50,000 missile just waiting for you to light up your radar to track that Gepard and then puts the Stinger right through your cockpit. So
but that's also why
that's
we
one thing.
stationed our Patriot. We always station our Patriot missile defense next to the asset it's protecting, because they perform better when they're the target. Their
Yep.
radars work better when they're actively being targeted. So you want that from the larger systems like your Patriot systems, but for the Avenger and I can't pronounce the German one properly. I'll leave that to you.
Gepard.
With that, you kind of turn it on when needed.
Right. Look, you don't need a radar for ground attack, like you said. You and those
Those guns
35
swivel
millimeter.
below zero. I'm telling you, those guns could shoot at a downward angle if needed.
You don't want to see a BMP 1 or 2 that is on the receiving end of this.
No.
So we tested the Gepards on
Why
actual
wouldn't you?
tanks. We tested them on actual tanks. So you can't penetrate heavily armored tanks. But what you can do is totally fuck up the visual systems, so that the only way to put a shell into a Gepard would be the commander getting his head out and directing the turret drive and the gunner left, right, back, forth, and so on. Definitely not going to happen. You can obliterate any track of any tracked vehicle, no matter how much it is armored, that vehicle, and make it combat ineffective. So,
but think if you could flank with that and catch a lightly armed convoy with fuel and like
it is Highway to
APCs.
Hell, Iraq, 1991, once again. So, literally, this is, some people may know the Vulcan Avenger gun of the A10 and what that does to a tank. Now, imagine that stream of ammo let loose on, like you said, on infantry, whether they are protected by an APC or not. At the usual combat distances and the power of these Ehrlichen guns, it's not going to make a difference if you're in an APC or outside.
The A10 shoots bullets that are the size of Red Bull cans. They'll tear up a pillbox. If you're in front of it, you're just not in existence anymore. You're now one with the earth. And
so, yeah,
the jet that I suggested was a precursor to that. Has a smaller gun. It's a smaller jet, but it's cheaper. They could be acquired. they could do
Well,
a lot of damage.
going back to what we said, what jets do I recommend? I mentioned the
Yeah,
Super Tucano. The other thing is
right.
if you're really planning
That's the
for
flanker, the flanker
no,
variant.
the flanker variant is the Su-34. Ukraine had
Okay.
them, but if you want to switch to Western equipment, the Super Tucano is from Embraer. They are Brazilian, I think, and the U.S. Air Force is considering it as a close support airplane at this moment. That is the first plane I'm suggesting. The other plane, which might be a better choice, is waiting until the T-7 Red Hawk is available. It's going to be a trainer aircraft, but basically every single trainer can be reconfigured into
Wait,
a light attack and light fighter mode.
we have a
So
new light attack plane that's propeller driven.
yeah,
It's
that's essentially the Super
yeah,
Tucano.
yeah. I mean, it's Scout, but they put missiles on it.
Yep. What people don't know is the Navy had propeller-driven planes in the Vietnam War. So, for
Hmm.
example, the Sky Raider. The Sky Raider was
Sky
essentially
Raider was
flying
also
alongside the Tomcat.
yeah, the Sky Raider was one of the precursors, along with the jet that I've been talking
Yep.
about, to the A-10.
So that is in not only in terms of cost value analysis, possibly a better choice in that way. The other choice is obviously that Ukraine goes heavy on, for example, Black Hawks or any other attack chopper that has transport capacity. So which would make you which I think would be a much larger deterrent in the sense of you can park it in any garage, you roll it out, put a couple of the Ukrainian equivalent of Marines or Special Forces in it, fly across the border, tear shit up, insert your insurgent troops, and bugger off again before the Russians
Yeah,
can react. So
and we gotta have
probably a
some
better deterrent.
Cobras. We gotta have some Cobras still laying around. I mean, we wouldn't sell the Apache Longbow to them, but maybe some of the old Cobras.
Well, the Cobras they are just plain gunship, not no transport capacity. So if we had some
Right.
Mi-24s lying around, that would be a thing. So, but once again, I don't see the case for something as potent as an F-16. Even the earlier versions, the Block 30s and Block 50s. Um, I don't know what the message is here, and yeah, like I said, from a military perspective, I don't see a case at this moment in time.
I don't get it, but they just keep on. I mean, they've been consistent with F-16, F-16, F-16. And as far as Ukraine coming into NATO, how dirty does this war have to get for Western, especially the Western NATO regions, to overlook all of, the government wasn't all that great. It's very corrupt. Financially, it's very irresponsible and corrupt. How bad does the war have to get for us to overlook that? And I don't mean just Hunter Biden, because he's already been bought, but Biden, his daddy ain't gonna be president forever. The Clintons are on their way out. There's no clear successor. Chelsea's not gonna do anything. I don't think she has it in her. I mean, who's gonna be their Western ally that's okay with all the corruption that was there, that was essentially keeping them out of NATO? It was corruption and the threat that Russia might attack if they joined. Well, Russia already
Well,
attacked, but the corruption's
Russia
still
already
there.
attacked. So
But the
the
corruption never got
you
fixed.
need to look beyond. You need to look beyond that. What's happening right now? Well, let's zoom out for the bigger picture. We are building a or the Poles are building a massive railroad into the Baltic. Number one. So we have Finland joining NATO. We have Sweden joining NATO.
Well, Finland's
So,
in. So
well, the Swedes are not far off. So, really, the thing is, at this moment in time, what's going on with NATO and world politics? Number one, I would say, why is the war in Ukraine? Why do we keep overlooking any kind of issue with Ukraine? Like you said, why do we keep throwing money at it? Um, because we have the money, the Russians don't.
Yes, but
And
my government's about to essentially shut down because they're dick measuring about we're like 34 trillion in debt and we're sending all this money over, but
another
we
couple of
can't fund our
trillion
own government.
won't make a difference. So
No, but the politicians keep weaponizing the debt ceiling increase. So the money side of it, especially with what's in our news in the States, the money is going to become a bigger issue than it was before. Because
well,
the coast, if the government goes into default, the Coast Guard stops getting paid. The other branches keep getting paid. The Coast Guard does not, and the Coast Guard performs so many vital actions.
yeah,
So they're forced to work without pay, but the Congress gets paid even if there's no money to pay the Coast Guard. And that doesn't sit right with me. It doesn't sit right with a lot of Americans. So if they
yeah.
try to send another $20 billion, $12 billion aid package,
Well,
that
I
pill's
don't know
getting
who
more
it was.
jagged by the
I
second.
don't know who it was, but one of the senators said when he was talking about this. Well, yesterday this and that was sent to Ukraine, and I think we owe it to the American taxpayer that we at least talk about it before the money is being sent. I am absolutely for this money being appropriated and sent to Ukraine, but at least we should bloody talk about it. So,
Yeah.
no, the thing is, I think any kind of problem, any kind of issue with Ukraine is not as concerning for the decision makers as the knowledge that if Ukraine falls, then Poland, Romania, Hungary, Bulgaria are next. And
I would say
if
Latvia, Estonia.
oh, that is the thing. So in a very short time, Putin will physically assault NATO, not through
Mhm.
propaganda, not through any kind of cyber
Something that
means.
should
He
trigger an
will put
Article
boots
5
on the ground,
response.
and that well, it will trigger an Article 5 response.
It
And in
better. Otherwise, what's
let
the
me put
point?
it that way: we are not afraid of triggering Article 5. We are
And the
afraid
polls are
about what
ready. The
happens then.
polls are over there talking their shit. They're letting their nuts hang.
Look, the thing is, especially now, it's confirmed. We knew it before Ukraine, but now the Ukraine war confirms it. We would be steamrolling the Russians, and we wouldn't even have to try very hard. So,
No.
and that is a situation where the Russian people would absolutely support the use of nuclear weapons. And that is a situation NATO planners don't want to go into. So rather have the fight in Ukraine, rather bleed the Russians slowly but surely. Yeah, so it's essentially Ukrainians are dying right now for NATO and for our freedom. And going back what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, I am not okay with that. I am not okay that our politicians do not have the balls and say, "Bring it on, let's do this." So we can do that right now, or we can do it 2 years, 5 years down the line, because neither Putin nor Xi Jinping are going to be dissuaded by words or by a show of force. No, you need to actually physically do something.
Yeah, but see, every single year, Britain's military is getting weaker. It's already been called out by its own politicians as not being a tier one fighting force anymore, being a tier two fighting force.
Can I just say it was not a tier one fighting force in the first Gulf War in the 90s?
And well,
So
and
as sorry as it sounds, but
no, and then the second war in the Middle East, recent war, they're known as the borrowers.
so
So if we're going to call out Germany for not pulling their weight, we got to talk about Great Britain too. And if we're going to
there
talk
is
about
only one
Sweden not
way.
getting into NATO, we need to bring up why the fuck does Hungary get to be one of the least contributing members of NATO, but they're also one of the mouthiest.
Well, there's the problem. All these organizations, NATO, European Union,
Now the French, on the
they
other hand, the
do
French are
not
building
have.
new shit. The French
Look,
are getting ready.
the problem with that is not the financial part, is as you said, but the problem is a political one. We don't have the means of kicking someone out of NATO or the EU. I mean, we have the option of annoying people so much that, like the UK, they vote for Brexit. Yeah.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that hasn't worked with Hungary. But it's not the Hungarian people; it's the current government that is a massive pain in
Yeah,
the
but
proverbial.
America shouldn't have to shame the rest of the alliance into 2% GDP defense.
No, first of all, that's our best interest, and this could be really an agreement like Europeans defend Europe, and the US is starting to deploy to Asia to make sure the Chinese don't invade Taiwan. But different times, different story.
But see, our
Um,
Asian partners are building their military. Japan's amending their constitution on a weekly basis to build new
well,
stuff to kill. South Korea is building so much stuff. Poland is going to be having all the brand new
you
South
see,
Korean stuff.
the problem with Asia is, first of all, they naturally already don't like each other.
No.
The second thing is, we are talking about militaries that would be quite overwhelmed if suddenly 5 million Chinese with guns and not much manners show up at their border.
Mhm.
So, and the calculation is, well, the Americans are not fast enough to help us out. We need to do this shit on our own. So, in terms of Europe, the only solution I see is to make a European-wide army a mandatory thing, so that we have an army that does not answer to a national parliament anymore, but to the European Parliament. But and that
There
is that
should
is the
be a strike.
problem.
There should be an EU strike force and standing military presence, the same as NATO's reaction
Look,
force,
exactly like that.
separate from
And
NATO.
I tell you what the reason is why this is not, because this would essentially require a political union that renders national parliaments like the German Bundestag, the Westminster in Great Britain, or the Assembly in France pointless. And look,
Moot.
I'm European. I'm all for that. I don't see why my local constituency, in my case, the City Council of Edinburgh, or an area council, yeah, like a county in the States, can't perform the same activities that our National Assembly is doing in a different degree. Yeah. So we already are the local administration. If literally 90% of my problems that I have require me to walk a couple of 100 meters to go to the government or to the city council's office and say this is a problem. Yeah,
Mhm.
if it's taxes, that's federal level or national level, I can do that online. So, and literally, there was a sort of movement called Europe of Regions. So different regions, like my area where I lived, the Rhineland in Germany, being directly under the EU. So as in Europe as a United States of Europe, and the regions are independent but integrated into a bigger entity such as the EU. So now we then would have an EU leader that steps up to these international meetings and says 400 500 million people say this, you don't like it, tough luck.
And if that were to come to be, there I know there's a European sentiment. It's a vocal group that is tired of all the American presence over there. This would be a way to wean Europe off of the American military complex's dependency.
uh, Look, as much as there is some economic reasons why we want to keep the Americans in Germany, but the other question is, um, what would be the consequences for us? We have American troops deployed to German or European soil, but something kicks off in Asia. America does not have enough people to defend our interests, our freedom, because it is not You see, I have had this idea about, well, why is my liberty defended in Afghanistan at the Hindu Kush? Yeah, that's absolutely not contributing to my freedom. So, but
But
looking
also,
at,
why are we defending your freedom?
well, that's another
If you
question.
are not capable of, if you have the means to create an army, to create a defense force, but you choose not to because we are there, how many of us have to die for you before you're willing to die for yourself?
That's yet another thing. Yes. So, look, my thing is, it is foolish to believe that words or being nice to each other will work. It does not work as soon as there's one person, and I mean one person in the world, that has different designs on, well, I should be the one calling the shots. And if everybody else is just nice to that person and lets them do whatever they want, no matter how inconvenienced we are, yeah, because it would be mean to say something, then that person's going to rule the day. And I'm a
Mhm.
person that says, going back to what I said about the fight in Ukraine, we should have made it clear, if this matter is not resolved to our liking, we know this day is going to be a war down the line directly between us. We are preempting this. We are going in,
Mhm.
and you don't want that. So, I mean, looking at, let's go to the other side of the world, and let's use Taiwan as an example. What is Xi Jinping going to do if the next president has the balls and says, we recognize Taiwan as a country? Period. Doesn't say anything like, we are recognizing it as the one and only China, but we recognize it as a country.
Yeah,
That's
we
it.
recognize its sovereignty.
So, so what is Xi Jinping is going to fume, but what is he going to do? Invade the states? Invade Taiwan? He knows he won't succeed. Throw nukes at us? Well, how many of his are working? How many of ours are working? If we really want to play who has the bigger balls, then I know who has them, and it's not Xi
Well,
Jinping and the Wu Maos.
the China's best bet, if they wanted to go that route, would be to throw every single rocket and missile they could muster at the Philippines, at Guam, and at South Korea and Japan, and tell Kim Jong Un, this is the North's time to invade South Korea. We will cut you off completely because China's the only one helping North Korea. Either you attack now with us and keep the South Koreans out of the fight, or you're finished. So that would have to be day one, and they would just have to hope that they catch as many planes, as many undispersed fleets as possible on the ground, because our
There's this
airfields we will
thing.
repair. The planes will be harder to replace because it is so far from our homeland. So they're going to need to destroy as many key assets as possible and then throw everything in the kitchen sink at what's left.
Well, in any kind of scenario, I, I want to quote Don, and he alleges that he had a conversation with Kim Jong Un where Kim Jong Un said, "Well, I have a big red button on my table," yeah, and Trump simply said, "Mine's bigger than yours," and it works.
Hmm.
So, and this is the kind of thing. It's like the North Koreans, or Kim Jong Un rambles a little bit every now and then to keep himself relevant, but what's he gonna do? And let's go to the other extreme. Let's just say shit kicks off for real. It's over in half an hour. So, um, as a child of the 80s, live today, live your life, and don't get worried that somebody is an idiot. Don't accept that somebody is an idiot. So, really, that's about it, because I can worry myself to death that XYZ is happening, doesn't really have any influence on the likeliness of it happening.
See, I don't think that people are idiots. I just know that most people these days seem to be very stupid. What I put my faith in is a very, very strong human trait, which is self-preservation.
Yep.
So you can be dumb as hell, but no, if you jump off a bridge, it's gonna go badly.
Well, exactly that is the thing in terms of, do I really want the consequences? But if we are not, let's just say, if Xi
We
Jinping
have a
or
chart for that.
Putin, yeah, now if Xi Jinping and Putin don't think that there will be consequences severe enough to warrant thinking again, so there is that. Really, this is the kind of thing. Nixon had this, what he called madman theory. And one of the things he did during the negotiations to end the Vietnam War, he sent nuclear bombers with their payload to the Russian border because he could. So there is that kind of thing where I say we need to stop thinking in terms of we are civilized, we don't do that. We need to start thinking in terms of, well, what would, say, Xi Jinping, what would Putin do? And we need to actually do that. So
we have a chart for that. We need to send them the chart.
yep.
You fuck around this much, you find out this much. The problem is there's 100 million bodies every time you go a notch on that scale. And that's not
just
acceptable.
Just as an example.
That's a lot of dead life.
Last week, a senior American citizen was put behind bars in China for spying. And we all know spying charges is like, we don't like you. And that's why we put you in jail. Yeah, something like that. So, and what we should have done is, where is the most important Chinese official that we can get to right now within the next, say, 24 hours? Okay, this is the person. Get that person, relocate them to Guantanamo. This is what we do. You are a spy. And it will, look, it won't, Xi Jinping is not smart enough to get it immediately. Other people will. But after that happens 2 or 3 times, he will start to get the message. And other people
that
around
message
him
doesn't
will
work
start.
when you traded the Merchant of Death for a female basketball player who just got caught beating her wife again. And it turns out she didn't bring drugs into Russia once. She did it twice. When they see us making bad deals, it's hard. I feel like it's hard to press Xi Jinping because we take some people. He's like, oh, I'll give you a senior citizen who had done nothing wrong. And I get a high ranking CCP officer back. He'll make that trade. Who wouldn't?
Well,
we have a bad track record of trades.
I also have a feeling that any kind of person half worth their brains in China, if they will very much cooperate with whoever knocks on their door and says, you're coming with us to Guantanamo. They would say, my bags are packed. Can you please get me out of here? So there is that. And we don't know what kind of information we could get in debriefing these people. So the next thing, staying with China and spying charges, I just read an opinion piece that this new spy law and this crackdown on consultancies is because, well, we don't want you to talk to experts and get an opinion from them, because and we can do that. We can say this is a state secret, so you are now in violation of the law. So the thing is, Xi Jinping wants to keep undercover how things are really going in China. At the same time, he expects everybody else to understand China and do what he wants. You see, there is a discrepancy in, if I don't know you, if I don't understand how you tick, no, even if I want to, I can't please and appease you. So,
no.
And going back to the last governor of Hong Kong, Lord Patton, is we need to start not groveling. We need to start not appeasing and bending over backward. We need to start saying, well, if you don't like it, you don't like it. That's tough luck. So you want things from us. These are the conditions. This is what you do. If you don't.
Yeah, but somebody's got to grow the balls to do it.
Well, unfortunately, look, having the balls is one thing, but using them smartly is another. Not only in someone's personal life, yeah.
Well,
Really,
you have to have someone who has the balls to do it, but also has the political capital to remain in office after.
and to have the brains to know when to use it.
And you'll never find out anything about somebody when you're telling them yes. You find out about somebody when you start telling them no.
Yeah, I mean, there is, like I said, there is absolutely a point there, and we over the last 40 years with China, and not that long an amount of time, but for a significant amount of time, we have been too accommodating and indulging in our own lifestyles, shall we say. And yes, it is much easier sending the dirty work to China and enjoying the latest smartphone. But if, let's just say, if it means that I can't get the latest iPhone every year, but let's say every 3 or 5 years, and that keeps China out of the supply chain, I'm a person that says, sign me up. Where can I get that?
No, you just
Not
made me think of
because,
something so absurd. Well, we're the Aldari and the Chinese are Slanesh. They were born out of our indulgence, our
yep,
self-indulgence.
nice
We
40K reference
turned
here, but
the Earth
it is
into
that.
Warhammer 40K.
Look, it is literally like that. If we were to say no, I just want a new phone every 5 years, just say that, we could bloody afford them being made in the States. Yeah, and
I buy
look,
one when my old one stops functioning.
well, the other problem is my first TV in my life that my parents bought lasted for almost 30 years. So did the second one, because we bought something good and we maintained it. So I have bought a not so good TV and it was broken after 2 years or 3 years.
Mhm.
So, and I'm like, well, that's not good.
Better
So,
ingredients, better pizza.
well, yes, I mean, ironic, but he shouldn't talk about good pizza. So, no, to wrap this up. Um, if I need to
No
lower
F16s,
my
Ukraine. You don't need them.
if I were to change my living standards, if I would have to accept a change in living standards, first of all, I don't think it would be that much. Secondly, I do want to see something in return. So, for example, here in the UK, I pay 400 pounds, 600, $650, just for the privilege that I can buy electricity. I haven't used any electricity, but I'm paying that amount of money. And that's just not okay, because it's not being invested to the same degree in our infrastructure, especially here in the UK. So um, if you have more detailed investment plans, which would of course be much easier if there was a state supplier still, and say, okay, this is what our network costs us, this is what the electricity costs us, this is how many units you are using. Here's your price tag.
Yeah,
So,
Mark Cuban is doing that for prescription drugs right now.
oh,
It's a great model.
and
This
the
is how
other
much
thing, what I said
that it
about
cost us. This is our markup. This is shipping. This is your price. And it's all in black and white.
and for the tech issue, again, I know technological progress and so forth, and it doesn't preclude me from buying the latest iPhone every year if I can afford it.
Mhm.
Let's say an iPhone costs $1,000 right now, just as an example. Let's say we double that to $2,000 and say you're only buying an iPhone every 3 years. So every 3 years, that's $2,000. Whereas if you buy one every year, you have $1,000 cost for each one. So that's 3,000.
That's still
So
$6,000 per decade spent on cell phones. To me, seems incredibly wrong. Just wrong. It doesn't make fiscal sense.
if
The
somebody
material cost,
wants
the
to eat,
pollution.
look, if somebody wants to eat crap and have an iPhone, be my guest. Who am I to say no? You should be eating better food, better health, and maybe scale down on the phone expense.
Right.
Who am I to say that? So,
No, I was just saying for me personally, I can't get
yep.
there. I can't
I'm
get there.
look. I'm with you. What I well, funny enough, as we spoke about it, my first criterion when buying a phone, since I'm back in the UK or when I was in China even, was how much does that bugger cost me? I know what I need it for, and I don't need a high. I never needed a high end phone, and now I'm very happy with my Pixel 7. Fun fact: no, I'm not getting money from Google for this, but no, when I compare to what other people spend, and I'm glad none of my family does this kind of stuff. There is people literally. I know people when I lived in Germany. There was this person every 3 months or so they bought a new phone, and I'm like, wow. Well, no wonder you don't have any money.
See, I have a Galaxy S21. I believe they're on 23 or 24 now. And
Yep.
the only reason why I got one as new as it was at the time, it's several years old, is because I had received a bonus from my employer. So it was money that had not been earmarked or allocated to anything else.
Anywhere else?
And I needed a phone because my old one was overheating to the point where you could not hold it in your hand while it
Yeah.
was on the charger. And
Yeah.
I said, okay, I have an unexpected income source and I need a product.
Yeah.
So I overspent from what I normally would because the money was essentially prepaid. It was money that wasn't allocated for another
Exactly my
thing.
thinking.
And that's the only reason I got a
And
phone as new as it was at the time. And at the time I got it, it wasn't the newest phone. There
I
was more
mean,
expensive phones.
we can do Rish and Roland's life advice in in another video because I think we are about to go off track here. So, but no,
Yeah, we're
literally,
getting there.
it is to really to wrap this up, but this time for real.
For
Um,
reals.
we need to take a step back, take a good look at ourselves, and say, well, how much value do we put forward or do we put on our values? And all the people that shout out loud about understanding Putin, understanding China, doing this, doing that, go there just for 6 months. You will either be completely cured or you will stay there. So either way, it's a win-win situation for the rest of the world. So when I look at I just had another conversation with someone who has a friend in China, and basically all the conversations they have are about how scared that person is in China for their very lives. And I'm like, well, there is something you can do. So at the end of the day, convenience and lifestyle comes with certain sacrifices, and at some point every person will reach that point where they say, well, I don't want to sacrifice that. So, and
I'm no
then we
longer
need to
willing
look
to
at
pay the price.
exactly. Yeah, and
And I guess that's as good a place as any.
yeah, and that's where we are. So over there, Rish.
And over there, Roland. And now I can say good afternoon because it should be afternoon there now.
It definitely is. And Rish and Roland's life advice coming to this channel on another day.
On another day.
We are out.